Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our backyard. I've got a bird that's really happy in the yard. Sorry for that. This morning, I want to talk to you about the hummingbird spring migration. We've been seeing male ruby-throat hummingbirds come through the last 2.5 weeks easily, maybe up to 3 weeks. And in springtime, it can be really difficult finding blooms. And so I want to go through what they're really seeking out at the moment as they're coming through. My name is Crystal, and I garden in Zone 9B south of Houston along the Texas Gulf Coast. And hummingbird migration for us starts in March. We have hummingbirds that will overwinter with us. So we have rufous hummingbirds, and I have a female ruby throat that's with me all year round. And then we also have little buff belly hummingbirds. So we have 3 different types that I regularly see throughout the winter. We still have rufous hummingbirds at the moment. They haven't migrated completely through yet. But the male ruby throats are starting to come through. And I want to share with you the plants that are just profusely blooming at this time of year. And what you see here is my gorgeous coral honeysuckle vine. This is also known as lonicera sempervirens. And if you want that botanical name, just go in the description. I'll have that written in the description for you. This is a Texas native. Not only is it a Texas native, it is a native in a good part of the eastern part of the United States. It is a huge pollinator attractor. I've talked about this vine before. It is perfect for hummingbirds. This long, beautiful trumpet-shaped vine. The hummingbirds absolutely love this flower. It has its largest flush of blooms in the spring. And I can't stress enough how wonderful it is to have this vine in bloom in March, because when we have our winters, the last 4 winters we have frozen, and I've mentioned this, pretty hard freezes. And so plants typically take a long time to come back from that if they have to come back from the ground. This is a semi-evergreen for us. And so it is just a wonderful plant. I don't do anything with it. It just grows for me. So this is like no muss, no fuss, and look at the gorgeousness of it. I have it planted in the ground. I have it planted in containers. And then let me go down to the last one. And I also have it planted in a large container that we've drilled out the bottom of it so the roots can go down into the ground. The reason I had them in containers and just trying this out is because I wanted to see, I have a poor drainage area here, and this can flood easily and be standing in water for days, if not weeks. And so I wanted to see how the success is of each one of the vines. And I can tell you that all 3 are very successful. I am going to have to probably do the same with these 2 pots because they're going to be getting root bound if they aren't already. And so I need to address that probably this fall. I just haven't done that yet. But this vine I can't speak highly enough of. When it is done blooming, it also creates berries. And so I don't have any ripe berries yet. Here's a berry that's forming. And they will have these bright red berries that the birds eat. It also creates shelter for the birds and little bugs and animals. The native bees love this plant. You know, I can't, if you're thinking about hummingbirds, butterflies, native bees, and you're wanting a no mess plant, just a no fuss plant, this is it. It just does so much that it's probably one of the best performers in the yard for what I need to do with it, which is virtually nothing other than make sure it has supplemental water. Okay, what else are the hummingbirds going for right now? Well, I've mentioned they love Salvia. Salvia is the workhorse in the yard, and this I protected during our freeze. I was surprised that it came back. I mean, very little of it died. We covered it, I've mentioned, multiple times, and then it snowed, and so that snow created an insulating effect. And this is just wonderful. I've had blooms for a long time. This is Salvia amistad. And this is Salvia amante, the beautiful pink. And the pollinators and hummingbirds just love Salvia. So this was this year a huge bloomer and performer for me in March, and it typically isn't. Typically it's having to come up from the ground, but it did not have to this year. And I am just so ecstatic to have this plant. Oh, aren't these blooms just beautiful? So I did replace my porterweed. I have 3 colors, I think, right now. And this one is the red porterweed. My hummingbirds and native pollinators absolutely love this plant. I've talked about this. If you follow my channel, you know I'm a huge porterweed fan. This did not come back for me. So I had porterweed will not. Porterweed does not typically survive freezing temperatures like we've gotten. And so I did need to replace mine, and the hummingbirds do visit this daily. And because I replaced it, I have blooms because they were blooming in the nursery. So that was not something that came back in the spring, but I do have it in the yard. So I just did a video on planting up this, what I call my central garden bed. And so most of these plants are new and they are in bloom. I got them pretty much starting to bloom at the nursery. And of course, because they have blooms, the hummingbirds are visiting these. None of these are in bloom though, coming up from after the freeze. So I just wanted to clarify that. The only 2 that I've had blooming after the freeze are the Salvia and my gorgeous Coral Honeysuckle vine. Those are the only 2 that are naturally blooming. The rest I've purchased, and so they're in bloom, and the hummingbirds are taking advantage. And of course the hummingbirds, I've seen them on pretty much all of the blooms. They love, I've seen them down here and even way down to the ground, and they'll be just hovering and getting at these. Let me get in closer. So they do like lantana. Butterflies also love lantana, but my hummingbirds are down here at these blooms. I guess in the spring you can't be picky because there aren't tons of blooms around. They're coming here to the cigar plant or kufia. Of course, more salvia is just on their list of things they love. They've been going to the mystic spires, and they've been going to the Mexican bush sage, or also the Salvia leucantha. And then, of course, I have annual salvia here, Salvia coccinea, that they are visiting. And so it's interesting to see. They will take advantage of the blooms that have nectar. One thing too that I have to say is petunias, I've mentioned, don't do well for us throughout the summer. It's just too humid and too hot. But in the spring, it's nice to have this pop of color. And I have heard in the more northern areas, in the more northern climates, that hummingbirds like to go to petunias. I have never seen hummingbirds go to any petunias because I typically don't have many, but I have seen the hummingbirds visit this container. And I think it's because there just is not that many blooms. So if you have blooms in your yard in the springtime, it's absolutely wonderful because the hummingbirds will visit the blooms before they visit the feeders. And so it's nice to have blooms in addition to feeders to really bring those hummingbirds down to your yard if you're wanting to attract them on their spring migration route. Another thing I'd like to mention on hummingbird spring migration is we don't see huge quantities at the same time. So during spring migration, they're only coming through piecemeal, whereas in the fall they come through in bunches, because that migration, the fall migration, happens relatively in a close period of time, whereas in the spring it's dribbled out and drabbled out. The males come through first, then the females and juveniles. And so I'm showing you the plant here, which is a Salvia nemorosa called Rose Marvel. And my hummingbirds just really any kind of salvia they're huge fans of. I just had a hummingbird as I was moving over here fly right close to my head. So the biggest bang for my buck on flowers in the springtime have been the salvia, because these are returning and they're just blooming in abundance. And my beautiful vine, the coral honeysuckle. What do you notice, for all of you in zone 9, since we have advantages of having the hummingbirds, especially in Texas, migrate through and starting to come through this early? What do you find they're visiting in your yard? I'd be really curious if you could share with me blooms that you have that are blooming that have come back from our freeze. Because in the research that I've done, March blooming is tough coming back after a freeze, unless you can protect. So those of you that have brought in your plants in the winter, if you had them in containers, that certainly works wonders. But those of you that have in the ground, I'm really curious, because what I've read is probably one of the few that is blooming at this time of year is our native coral honeysuckle. And you can see I still am finishing up. I've only got this last bed over here to finish with soil conditioners. Well, thank you for joining me. It's exciting. Spring is such an exciting time, and I love having our visitors, the hummingbirds that are coming through. So I wanted to share that with you, because I know a lot of you in the northern areas have hummingbirds all summer long. We don't have a lot all summer long. We get them through the migrations, and then we have a few that stay with us, but not many. And so those of you in the more northern areas where they're breeding and their breeding grounds are, you're lucky, because you get to see them for a lot longer than we do. Well, thanks for joining me. If you have any questions or any comments that you've noticed, please leave them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your success stories. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you again soon.